Alrighty, Kevin, I have a question for you.
Hit me with it.
And it's going to sound weird.
Those can sometimes be the most interesting questions. You can learn a lot about a person in these.
I just want you to know, I want the listeners to know it's not weird. Okay?
Okay.
What are you wearing?
Let's see. I'm going to be honest, and this is something that I've seen pop up a lot about containment, where people are like, oh, people who wear jeans right now, like, what are you doing, man? And here's the deal. If you're comfortable in sweatpants, all the power to you. But here's the deal, folks. I'm really comfortable in jeans, so I'm going to be real. I'm wearing jeans right now. I'm wearing a t-shirt right now. Sorry for looking fly as fuck. I'm just sorry. I'm comfortable in this, so that's what I'm wearing. How about you?
You went way further into that than I thought you'd go. As I said, it's not weird because we are not recording next to each other. I am just trying to paint a picture for myself as to my co-host and I, as if we were sitting in a virtual room together recording this podcast together.
Definitely.
And to riff off of your jeans comment, dude, sure. Double. I'm also in jeans because
Thank you.
I'm super comfortable in jeans. Yeah, I had friends who were just like, oh, yes, jeans just feel like sandpaper to me now. And I'm like, man, you need to get some more comfy jeans. I promise you they're out there for you.
Enough about our legs. Let's talk about what we got coming up for this episode, James. Because once again, to our surprise, people are still making trailers. There's still content coming out. We don't know who's doing it, but we thank you for it because it gives us stuff to talk about. Today, we're going to be talking about the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Kimmy versus the Reverend interactive special, which is going to be one of like their Bandersnatch-esque choose your own adventure stories.
Yep.
We will also be talking about We Are Little Zombies, and James and I are going to continue the tradition from last episode where we reviewed a movie we didn't actually talk about the trailer. This week we're going to be talking about The Hunt. But before we can do all of that, before we can enjoy The Hunt, or We Are Little Zombies, or Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, we got this theme song.
You can't haul your stuff without a trailer hitch. Trailer hitch.
Grab a seat, pour yourselves some whiskey neat. It's time to judge the shit out of these feature releases by the movie trailers. We're trailer hits. This movie might totally suck, but the whiskey sure is going down fine. Yeah, we're trailer hits.
James, just despite the people who are upset at folks wearing jeans, I'm now also wearing a corduroy jacket. Welcome to Trailer Hitch, everybody. I'm Kevin.
I'm James. And Kevin, I have to ask, does this corduroy jacket also have those like little elbow patches?
Oh, you're goddamn right it does. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And I made it a point
to... the college professor. I love it.
Yes, absolutely. I got one hand in the pocket and another hand on a corncob pipe, and I'm here to lay out some knowledge and be boring. This is Trailer Hitch, where we rate and review movie trailers. We rate them on a scale of need to see more, or never need to see. If James and I both give something a need to see rating, we celebrate. We go, we see the movie, report back to you guys in a segment called Trailer in the Rearview, where in which we review the trailer in retrospect and talk about the film writ large. Now, we didn't talk about a trailer for The Hunt, and that's because, as I'm sure you've surmised by now, at the end of April when we're recording this, at the beginning of May when this episode drops, things are different now. We can't just go willy-nilly to the movie theater. We gotta trudge over to our respective couches and watch stuff on the telly. That's the only way we can watch stuff. And because of that, we're making it a point to talk about movies that have started to crop up as VOD releases, like those early VOD releases where you pay $20 and you get a movie. You split it with a roommate and it seems less scary that way. And so we're going to be talking about The Hunt tonight. But before that, it kind of feels like we're all cooped up, which may remind you of one Kimmy Schmidt, who is a character in a Tina Fey co-written series on Netflix. And if you're thinking about her and wonder what she's up to right now, there's good news. There's a new trailer.
Kimmy.
Where'd you get that?
There is another girl.
Well, girls, plural. God, Richard, shut up.
There's another bunker. I have to get to those girls.
What, Kimmy? Your wedding is in 3 days.
This is a pickle. How do we choose?
Maybe you can help us.
That's it. Titus. You're a genius.
I know.
It's a miracle. There's a new Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt movie. Yes, this is an interactive movie a la Bandersnatch on Netflix. This is Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Kimmy versus the Reverend. This stars Ellie Kemper, Jane Krakowski, Daniel Radcliffe, Carol Kane, Titus Burgess. This is directed by Claire Scanlon, written by Robert Carlock, Tina Fey, Sam Means, Meredith Scardino. Our random shout out, because we here at Trailer Hitch like to give random shout outs to cast and crew members because the top billed people tend to hog all of the credit. And this week we are going to be shouting out Angela Anvil, who is a mole woman. Hey, Angela, good job, bud. We can't wait to see you underground.
Okay, I'm glad you specified that she's an actress, because in my head I was like, is that a new crew position on movies? Because I want to be the mole woman.
Yeah, totally. It's one of those things where it's like you have extra food at the end of the day. Now just go ahead and dig a hole, bury the food, and store it for a little while. Honestly, not a bad way to make a living. But yes, this is the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt movie. Now, this opens with Kimmy, who is engaged. She is engaged to a man played by Daniel Radcliffe. And if you're like, I saw all 4 seasons of Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt and I don't remember this, don't worry about it. That's new for this movie. I actually had to double check this. She comes home and Daniel Radcliffe is like, oh, we got so much to plan for the wedding, but I like kissing you. Then suddenly there's a choice that appears at the bottom of the screen. Do you want to make out? Or do you want to plan for your wedding? This unseen hand chooses make out. And so Kimmy Schmidt and Daniel Radcliffe start kissing in an uncomfortable manner. Then all of a sudden we kind of pan out. It turns out we're looking at a screen and Titus, the famed character from the show, is looking at this and he's like, why are you making these pasty white people kiss? That's our cue that, okay, this is going to be an interactive movie. From then on, we get the story, which is Kimmy ends up visiting the Reverend and effectively finds out, oh no, there was more than one bunker. So the premise of Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt was she was a woman who was kidnapped and kept in a bunker. She gets out in the pilot and basically has to figure out how to live her life after that trauma. So for this movie, she ends up finding out from the Reverend, oh no, there's more than one bunker. And so now Kimmy Schmidt is like, fuck, I gotta save them. And it basically comes down to she's got a wedding to plan and she's kind of neglecting that. But in the intermediary, she's got to try and save these women at all costs. And from there, we get a little bit more with the interactive movie portion of it. It comes up again, I think, in probably the strongest joke, which is they're out in the middle of nowhere and one of them calls an Uber and it's got a 4,000 minute wait on it. And they're like, well, what should we do? Should we wait for the Uber or should we just walk? And this unseen hand changes wait for the Uber. And it whip pans and they're just 2 skeletons dead in the road. And then one of the characters from the show comes out and is like, I don't think that's how it's supposed to end. So then there's a do-over. And then, you know, they pick the quote-unquote correct choice.
Correct. Yeah.
And I actually really like that because that helped to set up the stakes for the choose your own adventure thing. Now, with the Bandersnatch movie, the Black Mirror thing, it's Black Mirror. Black Mirror is pessimistic as fuck. So, of course, any choice you pick in Bandersnatch kills you. It's because Charlie Booker doesn't know how to smile. Now, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, when I heard that there was an interactive movie, I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But at the same time, it was a pretty lighthearted comedy. And though, yes, of course, as you can tell by the premise, it dealt with weighty themes, I'm not really expecting there to be like massive stakes with these. And this showed you, no, if you wait for an Uber too long, you'll die. You'll kill your favorite characters of the show. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. So like that sets up stakes for the interactive movie portion of this. And then on top of that, we have pretty interesting stakes with the actual story of the Unbreakable movie, which is Kimmy has to choose between living and continuing to grow in her life or effectively having to go back into her past, but it's a way to save more people from suffering the same fate she did and potentially giving them the same opportunity she has right now, which I think is a really good premise. And so that's the general gist of what you're walking yourself into. James, my man.
Yes.
How are you feeling about this?
Good. Yeah. Like you said, we haven't gotten many movies like this yet. So it was, if people remember Black Mirror, the very popular sci-fi TV show that, like you said, is always very, very bleak. They did this concept. It's a choose your own adventure thing, like the books. I never did it, and I loved the idea of it. I saw the trailers. I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. And then the old, Ron Swanson curmudgeon in me was like, wait a second, Netflix is just kind of like saving the data of the things you choose in this thing.
So you're saying Netflix is trying to figure out how good of a person you are?
Maybe.
You heard it here, folks.
It was more
Netflix
like,
stealing your personality.
it was more like, remembering which cereal the audience made the character choose to eat that morning. And it's like,
Right, that's such a weird. I don't even know
It's-
what the fucking branch stems from in that.
I
I'm
don't
sure there's a
either.
tree somewhere.
It's so odd. But anyway,
Yeah.
but on top of it, I'm not like the biggest Black Mirror guy anyway. Like I've seen a handful of episodes and I've
Yeah.
loved what I've seen.
Which, now that we've shit appropriately on Black Mirror, we will say, or at least I'll say, San Junipero is actually a really great hour of TV.
San Junipero is incredible, and so is the Domhnall Gleeson one and Haley Atwell.
Oh, right on. I haven't seen that one. Hey, James, thanks for the rec.
You're welcome. The thing with Black Mirror is it's just like I feel like I have to be in a mood for it.
Yeah.
And it's like, when are you ever in the mood to feel like everything's terrible? Enter Kimmy Schmidt, Kimmy versus the Reverend. And this really kind of got me. Like, if there was anything that I would break my my man of the wilderness, save my data, or save my...
I'm cool with them saving what I watch, but I'm
Yeah.
not cool with them saving what I'm thinking about while watching something.
Exactly. It would be a comedy like this. It would be a screwball-y comedy like this. And I think the humor in it was really funny. And like you said, they established really well that if you make a bad choice, there's do-overs. Everything's fine in this world. You'll kill them, but you'll get to do it over. It's not like we won't
Yeah.
it's not like we won't just like trudge along and it's like, that's the ending you get. I liked that aspect of it.
So it's interesting. I'd love to ask, how much, if any, of the TV show Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt have you watched?
Oh, right. I was going to bring that up. I actually never finished the 4 seasons. I was over the moon in love with the first season.
Same.
And then the second season happened and I watched like 4 episodes and then I never went back to it.
Here's the deal.
I know it gets much better after.
And season 4 comes along and they rebound so hard, James. Season 4 is so fucking good.
Oh, cool.
I was like, this is great. And then the show ended. And so I'm personally stoked as fuck that this movie is coming because I'm like, yeah, I definitely think they found a groove with this character. This seemed to be giving me exactly what I wanted, which is putting Kimmy in a really interesting moral quandary. You're giving me Titus, who's hilarious. I'm kind of surprised I didn't get as much Jane Krakowski in this, but I know she's there and I know she's going to kill it. I thought the jokes in this landed, and I think this is doing a pretty good job of playing with the interactive format where, sure, it might not necessarily be breaking ground like Bandersnatch, but it's just doing Bandersnatch now, but it's not depressing. And I'm like, fucking rad.
Because Bandersnatch, I think the idea was they want you to feel like you are driving this story.
Yeah.
For Kimmy Schmidt, I don't think that's the idea. I think the idea is just, we're gonna mine some good humor out of this format.
Oh, dude, that's such a good point. Because yeah, I think like one of the things that I didn't connect with Bandersnatch about is the main character is basically just toast. Like, he's just like the driest fucking person on the planet. And that makes sense because it's an interactive movie, and as such, it's like, oh yeah, we want to keep this character as flat as possible so that way you can impose your own feelings on what's happening in the scene. But now it's like, oh, I'm taking an established character, like one that's very strongly written, where it's like, you know exactly what Kimmy Schmidt is going to do in each circumstance. And now you're asking to make choices. And I think that will be incredibly interesting because it's like, well, then am I choosing what I want to do in these circumstances, or am I going to be effectively pushing the plot along in a way where I'm like, well, I feel like Kimmy would do this in this circumstance. I feel like Titus would do this in this circumstance. And is that going to embody the interactive experience? We'll see how an interactive special is when you have a fully fledged character that, especially I as an audience member, have a deep connection to. As such, yeah, this is an easy need to see for me.
Fantastic. So I have a question for you. Am I allowed to bring in a little bit of a different criteria in judging what I give this movie in terms of paranoia?
Well, I mean, like, it is definitely a new concept, which is interactive movies and making trailers for interactive movies, and as such, it's like, yeah, I mean, that does involve some criteria. Is the only reason you wouldn't do this because you're afraid Netflix is going to steal your personality?
Well, I mean, not in so many words, but yeah, sort of. There's a paranoia aspect to plugging in a whole bunch of like things that make up my personality into a algorithm. Based off of all of Trailer Hitch's normal criteria, this is a need to see it for me. So,
Hey, double tease. Digital clink.
Clink, 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 clink. But I will say this type of stuff still does kind of freak me out a little bit. If the stay-at-home order was lifted, I would come watch this at your place and just let you make all the decisions.
Can I suggest you watch Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt and you just do the opposite of your personality, so that way it's like, oh, this is what James is, and you're like, psych, robots.
But now this is on the record on the internet. They're going to be able to read this.
Do you think AI accommodates for our listenership?
It's not what they are doing, it's what they're capable of doing.
Listen, if you're a robot and you're listening to Trailer Hitch, first of all, hi, welcome. Please don't mind James. But if you're out there, dear robot listener, please write into trailerhitchmailbox@gmail.com. Let us know how you're feeling. Let us know if you're going to watch Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. Let us know if James is offending you right now, because we are PC as fuck, and I'd like to extend that to our chipped brethren. Cool, man. I mean, like, I'm glad that you seem to dig the trailer. Yeah, and I appreciate the fact that you're paranoid that robots are going to kill us and they're going to turn us all into little zombies. Which, speaking of, James, we are little zombies. Not literally, because the robots haven't killed us. I'm talking about the trailer. Let's get into it.
こんな小さな箱に収まっちゃったよ。どういうことだよ。
Brains, but not too big because we are little zombies. This is written and directed by Makoto Nagahisa. This is starring Kaita Ninomiya, Mondo Akumara, Satoshi Mizuno, and Sena Nakajima. Our random shout out.
No, hold on. You're breezing past this. I just want to give you a little bit of a round of applause.
Not yet, dude. I still have that random shout out. I might butcher this too, and I may have butchered the other ones. Who knows?
You said it with confidence, though. That's all that matters.
We would also like to shout out Kazuki Takakura, who is the 8-bit designer on this movie. Hey, Kazuki. Good job, bud. You did the 8-bit design on a movie. Or girl. I'm not familiar enough with Japanese first names to know whether or not you're male or female. Gender is a fluid concept. Fuck it. Good job, you.
Yeah, that's right. Good job, you.
James, do you want to walk us through this? If you would like me to do it, because, like, I know I'm the foreign movie and hipster correspondent on the show, but if you would like to take over for this one, because I know Unbreakable,
No. I'll do it. It'll be fun.
All right. Nope. All right. I'm here for it.
All right, we open up and there is a smokestack, and there's just like stuff coming from the smokestack. It's a still image. There's very solemn talking happening underneath it of a boy talking about how his parents turned to dust.
Is this one of those foreign movie poetic cinema things? Time will tell.
Or James will tell in his
True.
in 20 seconds. We see said boy looking at corpses in a very empty morgue, it looks like, and he's about to take the face off of it to like ID the body, and then burst in with big signs, and It's a prank show. It's a prank. We're pranking you. We're pranksters. We got you. You got
Your parents
pranked.
aren't actually dead. Look, they're sitting up right now.
Yay. Okay. And then the kid's all excited. He's like, I'm on the prank show. Like the prank, the title.
The prank
the
show.
And they're like, you're on the prank show. And he's like, oh my God. Okay. So that happens. Then I get confused because
Well, basically,
hang on,
okay, all right. I'll let you go.
And then they leave this part. It's an international film, so I am reading a lot of subtitles.
You are.
I'm trying to keep up. What I gathered is his parents turned to dust and died. JK, they didn't. It was a prank show. And then after that, it's like they ignored the prank show part, and oh no, they did die. All of our parents died. We're orphans now, and we're gonna start a rock and roll band.
The prank show bit is 100% a fantasy.
The trailer had a seizure, and and then so did I.
Okay.
And then it ended. And there was 8-bit pixel titles, and those were great.
Good job, Kazuki. Okay, so I would say you're doing a great job, James. Like I'm not giving you any notes. What I'm asking is, would you like me to kind of come in and fill in some gaps here and there?
I do, but I will say one thing seriously though right now, because
Sure.
I was joking, but I was serious in the fact that I did not track that at all. And I see you kind of shouted out like, oh no, the prank part was a fantasy. Cool. That was not clear because of the style of the movie, which we will unwrap.
Yes.
We will unwrap.
We will unwrap
it is very psychedelic all the way through.
Oh God, yeah, it is.
So what part of it do I know am I supposed to take seriously or not? I have no idea. They don't establish anything really as I'm supposed to take this part seriously, therefore everything else is a fantasy. Everything just looked like a fantasy to me. So
Sure.
I personally had a hard time focusing on this one. And we'll talk about this on a larger scale, but there is, I don't know if it was intellectual bullying in the trailer or if it was an article author who wrote this, but it was something about, ADHD, and it's like, oh my God, the hyperactivity of the trailer and the energy and kids with ADHD and stuff like that.
I think that must have been an article. I don't remember that title card. There's definitely intellectual bullying in the trailer, but
I want to talk about like the energy and the that aspect of it, and how I am not able to focus on this at all.
That's okay. Yeah.
So,
it is. And bear in mind, I'm not discrediting you one goddamn bit, my man. I am actually going to join you on this hill and say this trailer is super bonkers. Like there is so fucking much happening within this. So it's a fantasy portion of it. It's because you get that prank show bit, and then right after that, the voiceover ends up coming back in, and he says, "But there was no twist. My parents were dead, and I'm an orphan now." And I get the impression the other 3 kids who he forms a band with, because We Are Little Zombies is not literal. They are not zombies. Little Zombies is a band. So it's like this kid's parents die. There are 3 other kids whose parents die. I'm assuming as of right now they're siblings. That's not made abundantly clear within the trailer. But these kids are like, well, our parents are dead. And they are because after some psychedelic shit, which we'll get to the psychedelic shit in a second, you see the kids at a funeral, and the main kid is holding a portrait of his mother at the funeral, and he accidentally drops it, and that's when the first intellectual bully card comes up. So I'm absolutely taking on face value his parents are dead. The prank show thing is like his idle fantasy. And
I think that's fair, and I think it's clear. I think it is clear later that okay, they're going with the parents are actually dead path. I didn't catch anywhere where it was calling out the prank show thing as being a fantasy. That was either too hidden for me, or there was just too much going on where I couldn't focus on what was happening, so I missed that explanation. So to me, everything just looked like rambling mess. And I say mess, and obviously that is a term used to describe something negatively. I don't think this was completely all bad. I just, in terms of the way my brain works, I had a hard time with this one.
Now, what I will give you, and like, bear in mind, I completely understand, man. This is a super hyperactive trailer, and a lot flies at you. And it's not just the story; it's also, it is a deliberately strange and psychedelic. You oftentimes see the main kid with some sort of electronic device in his hand. And just given the 8-bit titles, I'm assuming those are like he's got a video game in his hand. And as such, it's like, okay, yeah, like he filters this all through like video games, and it's a little kid, and he's just kind of like processing things on a very, very primal and impressionistic level. And that's why the trailer is so bonkers and batshit as it is, because it's this kid trying to process the fact that his parents are dead. All of a sudden, it's like, okay, well, we don't want to get thrown out on the street because we're orphans. Let's form a band. And so they form a band called the Little Zombies, and then all of a sudden, these tastemakers look at them and they're like, ooh, they're orphans. And they're like, that's a good angle for them. And then they become a hit. You see them kind of like tour around a little bit and become like massive sensations. And the trailer ends with them on a rooftop, and the main kid gets done singing a song. And then after finishing, he immediately turns around, runs to the roof. The camera person is like, whoa, hang on, runs, and the kid jumps off the roof, and that's the end of the trailer. And it's, I'm not taking it away from you, man. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
And if it was too much or it was overwhelming, I don't blame you. Even though I may have caught that their parents were dead at the first glance of the trailer, I definitely needed a second watch in order to feel like I had a grasp on not just what was going on, but how I felt about it too. I can definitely say after that first watch, I was like, this is great, but I don't really know why. And now I watched it a second time and I'm like, okay, I feel like I have a better grasp on what I liked about this. And I will say I like the hyperactivity because this movie is from the perspective of a child. And you get that from the fact that it's his VO, and everything is big and propulsive. What I like about this too is a good amount of those subtitles are the standard ass criterion white text with black shadowing, but there are certain points where the subtitles are thrown up like their title cards too, and I feel like that's great. I feel like that really matches the tempo and the style of the movie that they're trying to sell.
Right.
And I think when it comes to selling a foreign movie, I think if you did just like, here are the standard ass way we're going to do the title cards, doesn't quite cut it within the context of a trailer like this, because it's so big and crazy and wild. Doing just like standard ass subtitles, bruh, it just doesn't fit. But if you do what this trailer does, all of a sudden you have something that matches the audacity of the rest of the trailer. And I'm like, that's really cool. And that's what I want to see more out of foreign movie trailers, especially comedies, especially surreal or mindfucky movies like this. I want more of them to kind of carry this same sort of like creativity to how they make their trailers.
Sure.
And as such, I'm like a really huge fan of this trailer because I get the general story here. I get the style. Do I understand every single nuance of every single weird ass cutaway? Why we're focusing on a pair of scissors cutting at a random moment? Not necessarily, but that doesn't mean that I'm not enjoying it. That doesn't mean that I'm not engaged. But
Obviously means they cut something out of the trailer, Kevin.
we're getting editing within the trailer itself.
Yeah.
Genius. 5 stars, need to see.
This is a very difficult one for me to talk about. I love the creativity in it. Obviously, I can tell there's a lot of people that would really eat this stuff up. I wish I was one of them. The reason I brought up the ADHD thing is because I read it. It was Slash Film. One of the authors from Slash Film wrote about this film and was like, oh yeah, it's like, because like like kids and ADHD and stuff like that. And I'm like, as a kid who had ADHD and probably still does, I don't know if that's something that really disintegrates, but I never studied ADHD. So
I would be surprised if you did, because that's not your field.
Yeah, I was just told I had it as a kid,
Sure.
and then told to take stuff for it. And my experience with ADHD was stuff like this is completely incomprehensible to me.
Sure.
You've
been overloaded. Yeah.
It's a really hard truth as to why I didn't read comic books as a kid. I loved comic books. I loved the idea of comic books. I wanted nothing more. I had comic books, but I wanted nothing more than to enjoy and love and be a comic book kid. But I cannot open up a page that has 17 different panels on it and just expects me just to focus on certain aspects. Like, it's just too much for me. It was too much for me then in a comic book form. This type of movie is too much for me now in a film form.
Okay.
Again, though, but comic books are a massive industry and billions of people are able to enjoy them. Therefore, I think there's merit to this trailer, and I wish I could grasp it better, but I think it just washes over me, and I try to focus on things, I really do, but the mixture of the high energy, the chaotic nature of it, and the fact that I have to read subtitles, which I am already slow at to begin with, mixed for a cocktail that had me puckering quite a bit. It was like,
Yeah.
it was like your friend makes you a really, really good, like good quote unquote martini that they're very proud of, and you try it, and you're just like, I think the craft is very good, but can I just have a beer?
Dude, no, that's totally legit. And like, I will say that yes, this definitely, it's intense. And intense doesn't mean that it's not funny or not lively, because I think it is absolutely both of those things. But from a pure visual perspective, it's fucking intense. And it's one of those things where I can completely appreciate if it's like, this just, I'm not registering enough of this, because I can understand. You look at a tiger that is shot 8-bit style and it's behind a set of stripes, and you're like, well, how am I supposed to feel about this? And we've moved on after half a second and it never comes back up again. I can understand why, especially as someone who wants to be able to focus on things and be able to process it, and not necessarily getting that gratification, especially with how fast moving it is. Dude, legit. Like, I can completely appreciate that. And I would never fault anyone for looking at this and being like, this is fucking soup. Like, this is just like an amalgamation of different influences ground up and spat out, and I don't know what I'm looking at. Like, if you feel that way, that is completely fine. Or if you're like you, where you're like, I can appreciate what this is trying to do, but this is wholly not for me, fucking more power to you. I'm on your side, but I'm on your side kind of a little bit further. Like, I'm kind of like inching away, because I'm probably going to see the shit out of this movie.
That's awesome.
Like, again, it's one of those things where I have a very, very base read of this, and I already went over it. But like, at the same time, I'm like, I am just so bewitched by this, and like, I'm completely cool with the fact that it's as hyperactive as it is, given that who our point of view character is, and especially given what the kid is going through. His parents are dead, and he is trying to process his grief, but it's also coming from the mind of this like kid that just force feeds himself video games and stuff, and so his mind is just like constantly bouncing the fuck around. And so I'm like, I'm fine with not really being able to understand it, because I also don't think that kid fully understands what he's thinking either way.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where it's like, I'm along for the ride. I'm willing to be just as confused as this kid is. And I also think the music kind of slaps. And that's good news, because it's definitely a music movie too.
Yeah, I thought there was aspects of it where I'm like, oh, I really dig their band.
Mhm.
But then there was also just like one or two aspects of it where I'm like, huh, that's weird. It sounded really good a second ago, and now it just sounds like noise. And then, and then like another like 10 seconds go by, and you're like, oh, it sounds really good again. I don't know what happened in the middle there. If I'm being honest with myself, this is a never need to see it for me. A lot of the times we have trailers where it's like, this is just isn't for me, so never need to see it. And I feel like that's not, it's shortchanging this trailer even to say that. I'm so sad that I don't get it.
Oh, dude. Dude, no, don't be sad about stuff, because at the end of the day, man, like, we all have like our weird idiosyncrasies in terms of like our tastes and what we like and what we don't like. We've had so many episodes where we review something and you're like, I totally understand the points you're making, but at the same time, I just still love this though. And that's good, because I'm never trying to convince you to love something. I never get the impression you're trying to convince me to love something. You call me a fucking idiot sometimes, but I take it in good stride. I've been in your boat too. There have been plenty of times where I've walked out of a movie and like Infinity War is probably the biggest one, where I'm like, dude, I wish I could love it. I don't know. It just doesn't completely land for me. I'm so sorry, guys. Like, continue loving it. Please love it. Like, do your thing. It just doesn't fucking hit me on the way it hits everyone else. And
Totally.
I understand that feeling, man, because it's a bummer. But at the same time, like, you can feel the way you want to about movies and TV and trailers especially. God damn it, that's what this podcast is all about. So I won't have you feeling sad. I want you to feel confident in the fact that you're like, I appreciate what's going on here, but no thank you, salesman. You were never need to see on this?
I'm a never need to see it based off of what my brain is able to handle right now.
That's completely cool, man. This is a need to see for me. I think this was a good talk, man. Like, I'm really glad that we got to kind of like explicate our feelings about how sometimes we can appreciate something but just not connect to it on like a root level. But like, so that's what we're hunting for, is like these very natural and earnest dialogues. But now that we're done hunting for that dialogue, James, do you want to get to the hunt?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm really happy you said that, because I would have had no comeback if you said that.
Are we the hunter?
What is all of this?
Or are we the prey?
Oh, I can't use that.
Just point and shoot.
Everybody get down!
Grab that camo, but also your Twitter, because this is The Hunt. This is directed by Craig Zobel, written by Nick Hughes and Damon Lindelof. This is starring Betty Gilpin, Hilary Swank, Ike Barinholtz, Ethan Suplee, Emma Roberts. Our random shout out is going to go to Troy Collins Jr., who was the special effects technician and the mold maker. Hey, Troy, we saw a lot of gore in this movie, and I'm just saying right now, you did a good job. I believed it.
I was going to say hats off to you, but heads off to you.
This is The Hunt. Now, James and I, as we have alluded to, did not talk about the trailer for this before we are doing this trailer in the rear view. And that is, of course, again, because look outside. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about one of these trailers in retrospect. Now, having seen the movie, look back at one of these trailers. So James and I specifically are going to be talking about the international trailer, mostly because James and I were talking, and this movie is definitely looking to satirize the American political discourse right now. And as such, let's be real, it's funnier to talk about the international trailer, because probably most Italians would be like, the fuck am I supposed to take from this? So here is the international trailer. Now, out of the gate, like, this completely shifts the tone of the movie. The international trailer definitely, I felt, played this as horror and like a serious thriller.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. The music cue is what really drives that home, too. It's serious. It's a serious music cue.
I can definitely confirm, having seen the movie, it is definitely more like an exploitation movie, kind of grindhouse, but like to a degree, like a very dark comedy. And so I will say out the gate, just from a tonal perspective, I felt like this wasn't giving you a good taste of what you were in for. But James, how about you? What are your first thoughts with this international trailer?
I would 100% agree with you. looking at the trailer on its own, I have no problem with it. It doesn't give you the feeling like you're seeing too much. I think there's a good blend of action and setup in it and explanation of plot. I think it is a good mixture of everything without making you feel like, oh, you just saw the ending. Where it does kind of come apart a little bit when it comes to, did this sell the movie properly? Like you said, is completely tone. And the tone is I don't want to say all wrong, but it's wrong enough that I'm like, you missed the mark on that. Like, I don't know why they went in that direction with the music cue. Honestly, I'm wondering if you literally swap the music cue in this trailer for something just a little bit punchier, just a little bit more energetic.
Mm-hmm.
Does that change the whole thing for you, Kevin?
Kind of. I mean, like, of course, we can certainly verify when you're editing something, the entire pitch and tempo of what you are editing changes drastically given what either the sound mix is or what the music is. And so to give this a different piece of music, I feel would on a very core level change what's happening here, because you're probably going to be cutting it to match the tempo of whatever that music is. But that said, I completely agree with you, man, where I think this does give you exactly like the schematics of what this is from a story perspective. And then from there, yeah, the only thing that's missing is just like this movie's intentionally kind of goofy in some respects. And it's also like pretty audacious in some respects. And it's also like trying for satirical points. So I think, yes, I feel like if you change the music, of course, it's going to change some things within the trailer, but if you still kept the mindset of what I think this trailer was intending to do, which is like, we're giving you the bare bones, just enough to wet your whistle in terms of what the story is here, yeah, I totally think that would help wonders.
Yeah, totally agree. So in terms of selling the movie properly, no, I think it misses the mark a little bit.
I do too, yeah. It's one of those things where I give it credit because it does get across what the movie is, but yeah, the fact that it's trying to sell it, I wouldn't go so far as to say like a serious the drama, but at the same time, like it is definitely making it seem like it is a more dour affair than it is. And maybe that's because it's international. Maybe it's because outside of the States, the concept of seeing a bunch of people gruesomely killing each other might not be a barrel of laughs. But here in the States, we eat that up with a spoon. Yeah, overall, I would say that this doesn't quite do it. And it really is just a matter of tone. And if they had thrown in some of the jokes in the trailer, remain within context, if they're also, kind of pick something that matches the lively score, that would be great, but c'est la vie. Oh, yes, let's talk about it. Let us get into the movie. So from here on out,
spoilers ahead, yeah.
Yep, spoilers ahoy. If you have not seen the movie, we definitely would recommend you check it out before you listen to us, because we will be going into pretty specific plot details, especially in the last act.
Unless you don't give a shit and you just want to hear us be entertaining talking about a movie you haven't seen.
You brilliant bastard, you stole the words right out of my mouth. Good job. All right, so let's get into it. Yes, so this is The Hunt. Now, basically, when it comes to The Hunt, there are two different, I guess to keep with branding of like just buzzwords, there are two different narratives with this movie. There is The Hunt as an exploitation movie, just like an action romp, bloody grindhouse movie. And there's also the narrative of The Hunt being political satire, which I think, depending on how you view this, you will get entirely different experiences from them. I don't necessarily think that those two things meshed into a satisfying whole for me. But what I will say is the action exploitation aspects of this, I found this movie incredibly entertaining. Like, I was definitely having a blast watching this. It's super short. I think it's like 85 minutes, and it fucking flew by. And I'll get into it once after you say your piece, my man. But I will say that the structure in the first 40 minutes I think is awesome. And then after that, it kind of shifts because it picks a central character. and then we stick with her for basically the duration of the film, with the exception of some flashbacks here and there. Overall, I felt like that made the movie just fly by, and I think the action is choreographed pretty well. But how about you, James? What do you think of the movie?
In terms of level of fun, very high. I think, like you said, the runtime helps with that. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It keeps itself fresh. That, again, makes it feel energetic and fresh every, I don't know, half hour. So in terms of structure and enjoyment level, man, I got nothing but praise for this. Gore, awesome. I thought there was good humor in it too. I couldn't point out anything to you at the time because, it was a while ago.
Of course, yeah.
What are we approaching 6 weeks now? So it's been a long time. I couldn't point out any jokes, but I do know there was some jokes that didn't land for me also. So there is that. The main actress, she's fantastic in this movie.
Yeah, Betty Gilpin, she's so good in this.
Even if everything else in this movie sucked, I would still recommend it based off of her like commitment and performance alone. But luckily, she wasn't the only good part. There was a lot of stuff to like in this movie. Like, well, look, we can start talking about spoilers at any time now because we gave the warning. But I think that's all I wanted to say before we really start unpacking
The thematic,
the thematic elements
the can of worms that is. Yeah. So what I will say before we get into that, so the structure that it seems like both of us really like. The hunt starts where you get like point of view characters, and like each of them just like fucking die within 5 minutes of each other. You get Glenn Howerton on a plane, and then you get like someone coming out from the back of the plane, clearly coming out of being drugged and confused and scared. They're killed and then dragged to the back of the plane, dragged directly next to a woman. We then see that woman wake up within the hunt itself. She gets up. She's like, what's going on? What's happening?
This is Emma Roberts now.
Yep, this is Emma Roberts. And then, like, bullets start flying, and she's like, wow, that almost hit me. And then Emma Roberts' head explodes. And now we're focusing on the dude who is directly next to her. And then that dude...
the guy from This Is Us.
Yep, the guy from This Is Us tries to save a woman who fell into a spike pit, gets her up and is carrying her, steps on a landmine, and then explodes. And now we're following Ike Barinholtz. Now, Ike Barinholtz, bear in mind, he gets out of there, makes it to a gas station, and then is killed at the gas station. And now we're following the people who run the gas station. And so, of course, at this point now, you're like, well, I bet they die. And they do. They get gunned down. And then we're following Betty Gilpin. And from that point on, okay, now we're focusing on this one thing.
Yeah, it's an awesome relay race of who we're following, who's the main
Yeah.
character. But what was nice is they kept giving you little tiny bits of the main actress while you were with the other people so that you recognized her at least.
Yeah.
For when the time came to follow her, to pass the torch to her, it felt a little bit more special.
Yeah, definitely.
We felt like, okay, maybe this one will stick.
Sure. And it does. And it was, I think, from a structural standpoint, I give the movie a shitload of credit because while we were beginning, I was liking the relay race, as you dubbed it. I was like, oh, this makes it really fun, and it kind of makes the movie play as a series of vignettes. But once it got to the gas station, I was like, oh, I really don't have a sense for who any of these people are other than like the surface level. This is just like, they're on the right and they're on the left. Do you get it? I'm kind of missing having like someone to latch onto as a character. And that's when Betty Gilpin gets in. And I'm like, oh shit, this rules. Like, this is exactly what I was looking for. Now I have a main character who I can latch onto and get more out of. And she seems very smart. And like, that definitely not only leads credence to how she's able to get away from everything, but that also makes me want to root for her too. Let's start to get into like the thematic aspects of this, because this is definitely a movie that's trying to flip a middle finger at both the left and the right. When it comes to the characters, since there was no depth to them, it all stayed on the surface. It was like you got a little bit about Betty Gilpin where it's like she's a combat veteran, which is also supposed to be a reason in the movie for why she was able to kill everyone. I felt like the characters could have been explicated a little bit more, because like they seem to give like here's the setup for why this is happening. This is very much a story-driven movie. And I think in order for the deeper satirical elements to land, I felt like they either had to get a little bit more specific with their themes, or I feel like they had to get a little bit more specific with their characters and maybe either draw out more why these people the people who are being hunted are so interested in conspiracies, or why the people on the left were so invested in wanting to hunt them, I guess. Because it's like they give Hilary Swank a reason, but everyone else is just there. It's kind of interesting because the movie, it's like kind of flipping the bird to, and bear in mind, I use these terms in huge quotes, but the left and the right. But at the same time, it's basically making fun of them on the same level as they make fun of each other. And so it's like we're kind of trying to show that we're better than this, while at the same time engaging in the same level of wit as a pissy tweet does. And I'm like, okay, but this doesn't feel like it's not as incisive as it is. But how about you, James? What are you thinking?
You know, the second you get over all the, wow, that was like wildly entertaining and really fun, then, you know, you're like, oh, okay, well, the thematics of it, I don't really know what the point of this movie was.
Yeah.
Or like what was the lesson they were trying to teach. I guess the best thing I can come up with is, and it's a vague lesson, but it's a good lesson, is whatever side of a topic you're on, don't be such an extremist, period. And I think that is just the overall lesson for everyone, no matter what.
Yeah, don't like start to view the other person without humanity, because then you're giving yourself the means to treat them however you want, and that's clearly awful.
That's exactly right. And after a few days of thinking about it, I was like, that's what I can come up with. And I like that as a lesson. But in terms of satire, that was mostly the humor that didn't land for me. Anytime it was trying to be like politically satire. Oh, this person did a thing on Twitter, and like these liberals are like being very, very overly conscientious about things that they're saying so they don't like politically offend people. And it's like, those are things that I don't really find funny, because I still think it's an important thing. So it's not, I don't know. It was hard. This was a weird cookie to try and crack for me, but at the end of the day, I had fun with it anyway.
Yeah, totally. And like I do agree, man, because it's one of those things where like, especially, like the, we have to try and make sure that we're politically correct even though we're murdering a bunch of people. And it's like, I get the direct juxtaposition there, and I get that even though they're prey, a lot of the right-wing people are talking about conspiracies and cucks and all that. But at the same time, it's one of those things where, like, it just kind of feels like looking at, like, extreme examples on Twitter of, like, here's an extreme example of the right, here's an extreme example of the left. And doesn't this seem silly? And it's like, well, yeah, it's because you're pulling the most extreme example from both sides.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so many more people fall into a middle ground of that. I feel like if you're on the right and you watch this, you'll be like, well, I'm not that fucking crazy. And if you're on the left and you watch this, you'll probably be like, well, I'm not that obnoxious. And then in that case, the satire isn't going to reach you. And I feel like that's why something like Get Out succeeds so well, is because someone has probably said unironically, I would have voted for Obama for a third term. Like, oh, I just love Obama. He's the best. Mm-hmm. And without realizing the fact that you're bringing this up to a person of color specifically makes it feel like you're going out of your way to say this to a person of color to make them feel comfortable, which is going to make them uncomfortable.
Right, because you're singling them out for their race, which is...
which is exactly. Yeah. And bear in mind, we will also time out to say, of course, we're two white dudes talking about this, but anyway. But I will say that's why that satire is so resonant, is because I feel like a lot of people could look at that and be like, fuck, I've definitely exhibited some behavior like that before.
And that doesn't necessarily mean like you're a bad
You're an
person,
awful person or anything.
but
No.
it is something to be aware of and maybe address it in the future if it's something that you can see now might make other people feel uncomfortable. Like I said, the those kinds of things in terms of humor in this movie didn't always land for me. Where it did land was the gore humor. Like
Mhm.
that kind of stuff, the surprisingness of the gore coming out of left field a lot of the time, and the fight choreography. Man, can we talk about how good the fight choreography was in this movie?
Oh, especially in the bunker, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the bunker, the hand-to-hand stuff between Hilary Swank and the final girl at the end. It's incredible. It's really, really great. And there was humor within the fight choreography. And that's the kind of humor I found myself laughing out loud at, not any of their like political satire jokes.
Yeah, and I especially loved how that last fight is shot, where the two characters are outside and you're just seeing them pass through fighting through the windows. And what I loved about it was it made the violence literally feel like you were looking at comic book panels. And I think was taking the best aspect of the movie, which just feels like a pulp, bloody, fun comic book, and making it literal. Like they found really interesting ways to shoot it. And you're completely right. They found some really great humor throughout some of those action set pieces. And I feel like that's really where the movie sings. Again, like from a pure entertainment standpoint, from just watching this as, I would say this is like a good like Friday or Saturday night movie. Like grab your roommate and, you know,
Make some popcorn, have some beers for sure.
Exactly, yeah. Like that's definitely what this movie is. I feel like this movie best suits itself as. And when it tries to reach for political satire, it might not hit quite as hard, but that's okay because like some movies can just be fun. And I feel like this one definitely was. Let's get into how we'll rate this. So we rate our trailer and the reviews on a scale of should see again, glad I saw it, should have waited, or shouldn't have seen it. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give this a should have waited, albeit a pretty high should have waited. But I'm happy that I got to watch this in my apartment with my roommate where we could like cackle and hoot and holler and talk amongst ourselves during this. And still pay attention to the movie, but also be able to lean in and be like, I feel like they whiffed on the point of that. But how about you, James? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it on the head. It's a very, very high should have waited. I enjoyed myself immensely with it, but yeah, it's one of those ones that it's like I would recommend to you, but I would say just like wait for it though. Wait for it to come, to a streaming service.
Like right now it's $20. Once it gets to like it's free on HBO, that's the time.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's not worth $20. I'm just saying it'll come to streaming. Just wait.
That's going to be it for us. Like, we've definitely covered a lot. Before we take off, if you would like to reach out to us, if you had a different opinion about The Hunt, if you also thought We Are Little Zombies was a complete fucking mess, or if you thought that the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt trailer maybe didn't do a good job at selling the interactive portion of it, write in, let us know. You can hit us up by going to our Gmail. You can just send an email to trailerhitchmailbox@gmail.com. Otherwise, you can hit us up on Facebook. If you just search Trailer Hitch Podcast, you should be able to find us. You can leave us a message right on our wall. Do whatever you'd like to do. Or if you'd like to make that missive a little bit shorter, you can hit us up on Twitter @TrailerHitchPod. Otherwise, you can take a picture and send it to us on our Instagram @TrailerHitchPodcast. Or you can comment on our YouTube page. Sometimes we read those off on the show. We're willing to do it again. Which, by the way, speaking of subscribing, if you want to subscribe to us, you can do that on YouTube @TrailerHitchPodcast. You can find us there. Otherwise, you're probably listening to us on either Stitcher or iTunes or Apple Podcasts. And if you're on one of those services, if you could rate us a review on one of those too, that'd be great because that helps us find more listeners who also geek out about trailers and want to talk about The Hunt. Before we go, we would like to thank Danny Schmitz from Lost in a Name for the amazing intro song that you hear at the top of every episode. We would also like to thank Rachel Ashley for the beautiful cover art that you see on our various social medias. You can find her work at Mighty Creations on Instagram. We would also like to thank Jenny Hawks, our Bad Movie and social media correspondent, for her sterling work week in and week out. And we would also like to thank Casey Clowers for the amazing outro song that you hear at the end of every episode.
You can't mount holy sails without a sailor stitch, and you can't haul your stuff without a trailer hitch. Trailer hitch.
Wow, I had a burp that was brewing about halfway through that, and just the show must go on.